All right, so this week we are in the second part of a series called Unexpected Christmas. And if you haven't figured it out, there's kind of like a little bit of a connection between the two because this Christmas season was a little bit unexpected, but it is not the first unexpected Christmas. In fact, the first Christmas story was a story like no other. And I think we've gotten a little desensitized to it. If you're with us last week, you heard us talk about the Christmas story kind of like with a special focus on Mary, the mother of Jesus. And what we said was that God delivers in unexpected ways. It was really just a catastrophe. You might have expected Jesus, like the ancient Jewish Messiah that all the religious people were waiting for, to be born in a synagogue, with all the religious teachers and the esteem, but he wasn't. He was like out in some cave or in a barn. He was put in a manger. Mary probably gave birth to him on the ground. It was just crazy Christmas story. And the hope is kind of like that we'll realize, okay, wow, things sometimes happen in ways that we don't expect them to happen, and sometimes there's something really, really good on the end of it. So after last week, I was thinking, okay, well, what if Jesus were to have been born in 2020, this year, maybe even during COVID? No, let's say not COVID. Let's say, imagine 2020, no COVID. Sounds like a really nice idea. If Jesus were to be born like in 2020, would I have been there? What if it was right here rather than Bethlehem? What if it was in Babylon? Not like ancient Babylon, but like Babylon village. Where would it have been? And would I have been there? Would I have missed it? Maybe it would have been like, in the municipal parking lot, like by the dumpsters, or behind one of the restaurants, or like in one of those alleys in the village way. Like probably in some forgotten, dirty place where nobody, and would I have missed it? But anyway, I was thinking about that. So a little something about me. I am really, really into movies with a twist. I don't see a lot of movies. I get a lot of flack from my friends for not having seen the really big movies everyone's supposed to see. And so recently, I would say in the past 5 years or so, I've been trying to see the movies you're supposed to see, like Star Wars and whatever. But I love when there's a twist. Allie and I, we just finished, not too long ago, maybe like 6 months ago, we finished watching a show called The Good Place. It's about people who go to The Good Place, and I don't recommend it for theological education, but it's pretty entertaining. Well, it started to get slow a little bit, and then there was a twist. If you're going to watch The Good Place, you're going to want to turn down the volume for the next 15 seconds, okay? Ready? Here's the spoiler. They think they're in the good place, but they find out they're actually in the bad place. And you don't find out until well into the show. Okay, that's a spoiler. You can turn the volume back up now. So when that happened, my mind just blew. I was so excited. All of a sudden, I was totally hooked on the show, and I couldn't believe it because it was this twist, blew my mind. In movies, when there's a big twist, sometimes I literally have to get out of my chair and just take a walk because a good twist is so moving. I told you I don't see important movies like Star Wars. I went almost my whole life without seeing Star Wars until just recently. I was like, okay, maybe I should catch up with the rest of the world and see Star Wars. And so I did. And there's the part, this is technically a spoiler, but everybody knows about it, when Darth Vader tells Luke Skywalker he is his father. That is a twist. If I would have heard that, the first time, when it was in the movies, on reveal night, my mind would have blown, because that's crazy. However, ready? However, though I always knew Darth Vader was Luke's father, it wasn't until I watched the movies and understood what was going on that I understood how meaningful and how uncomfortable that twist was. Because if you know the story, you know that Luke Skywalker has this battle with choosing the good, I think the Force, and then the dark side, and he's got to avoid the dark side. And everyone's all right, he's fine, he's not going to go to the dark side. But then you find out, no, his own dad is king of the dark side, or the Dark Lord, or whatever they call him. It's okay, well, that's uncomfortable. And now that I understand the plot, I get the discomfort. It's not just The fact that he's his father is not just like an outer space version of like Maury, right? There's more to it than who his dad is. It has implications, okay? We're going somewhere with this. This week, we are looking at a twist in the Christmas story. And if you don't feel the discomfort in the twist, it may cause you to miss like a huge part of what's going on in the story. If we don't see how meaningful and uncomfortable this is, we might not understand the essence of the whole Christmas story. And I hope that once again, like you'll see it, this is kind of unexpected. Maybe it'll kind of rattle your impression of the Christmas story. And so, this week, we are talking about those three kings, the people, I should say, known as the three kings. Now, before we get into this, there's a few things we have to clear up. One, they probably weren't kings. We don't really know if they were not kings. Two, there probably were not three of them. We just assume that there were three of them because there were three gifts, like the gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Fun fact, I did a little bit of research. And myrrh and frankincense, some of you know this, is like resin, which is like dried tree sap. And then you have someone who brings gold, right? It's like two guys totally miss the, and then one overachiever. Anyway, they also weren't there on the night that Jesus was born. So it's cool to put them in our nativity set. It's nice. It makes the scene feel a little bit more full. And they're part of the Christmas story, but they weren't there on like the big day. They probably came weeks, months, some people even say years after Jesus was born. So there you have it. Ready? Here we go. Let's dive into it. We are looking at this story written down according to Matthew. So we're in the Gospel of Matthew, which is the good news about Jesus according to Matthew. He says, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem, a little while after, like I said, in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem. They're from the Hamptons. Just kidding. They're Magi from the east. They came to Jerusalem and they asked, where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose, and we have come to worship him. So these guys, they're called Magi, right? Which is the closest translation to the original word in the Greek. And they go to Jerusalem because they've been looking at the stars, and apparently somehow they've come to the conclusion that the stars are telling them that the King of the Jews have been born. Now this makes sense. Where did they go? They go to Jerusalem. Why? Because for the Jewish people, Jerusalem was like headquarters of religious life. So they're like, okay, King of the Jews is here. Where are we going to go? We're going to Jerusalem. So they go there. And who do they see? Herod. Herod was known as the king of the Jews. But he wasn't like a king in the sense of like, he wasn't a good king. He was appointed by Caesar, by the Roman Empire. And he was basically just a puppet for the Roman Empire so that the Roman Empire could rule the Jewish people, and so people didn't like him. Now, Herod was an egotistical maniac. He called himself Herod the Great. And to give you an idea of just how crazy he was, he had some of his own family members killed because he didn't like the idea of them being king or queen. If something were to happen to him, he'd be like, well, they would be king. Well, I don't like that. So he literally would kill people in his own family. Not only that, but he knew people didn't like him, and so he had this plan that if he ever were to die, there were people in the community that also had to be killed on the day that he died, and these were people that the community loved. So he knew when he was dead, people wouldn't be sad, so he was like, well, make sure you kill people that everyone loves so that the whole community will be really sad. So at my funeral, if they're crying, maybe it's not for me, but at least they'll be upset that I'm dead, or when I'm dead. So this guy's just crazy. And what happens? Well, somebody comes up to him. These people come up to him and they're like, hey, we've heard that the King of the Jews has been born. And right away, Herod is like, I haven't had a child. What do you mean? Right? Like he's gotten, and this is going to burn a little fire within him. And sure enough, that's what happens. It says, when Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah, the King of the Jews, was to be born. So he's kind of like a fake King of the Jews, right? He doesn't know any of the ancient writings. He's like, okay, well, these people are saying, he's like, I better find out where this is. One, so I can answer their question, and two, so I can know where this threat is. So he calls like the scholars, and they they've got all this stuff memorized. They know the ancient scriptures backwards and forwards, and they're like, okay, well, he is to be born in Bethlehem. And they're right, in Judea. For this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land, they're reading from their Bible. He says, but you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means the least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. The Messiah is going to come from Bethlehem. Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me, so that I too may go and worship him. He's not going to do that. He wants to kill him. After they had heard the king, they went on their way. And the star they had seen, when it rose, went ahead of them, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, not the barn, not the cave, the house, right? Because this is after Jesus was born. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary. They bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. So somehow, miraculously, in a dream, like they're told, okay, Herod's up to no good, go some different way. So it's like one miracle, then another miracle, crazy things happening for the Magi. So that's the story of the Magi going to visit Jesus a little while after he was born. And we've incorporated it into our Christmas story, and that's very nice. Did you catch the twist? Probably not. I didn't either, for a really long time. But there is a crazy, mind-blowing twist happening, and if we miss the twist, we will miss something that is really, really important in this Christmas story. It's meaningful, and just like Darth Vader telling Luke Skywalker that he's his father, it's a little bit uncomfortable as well. So where's the twist? Well, I'll show you. It's right in the beginning. When it says in verse 1, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, where's the one who's been born King of the Jews? Now, you and I are probably like, oh, cool, yeah, it's those guys. It's their turn. This version calls them Magi. Other ones say wise men. Other ones say kings. But it's those guys that we put on, those three guys we put on the side of our little nativity, and they've all got a little box. And one of them is dramatically more valuable than the other two. But there's something else going on here. Okay, so what's a magi, right? I kind of hinted at this before. A magi. That's not correct. The singular form of the word magi is actually magus. Magus. Learned that this year, actually. Magi. The word magi comes from the same root as, comes from the same place that we get our word magic. A magus was someone who was an expert in sorcery, in witchcraft, in the dark arts. Like, they would have literally been considered wizards or sorcerers. They did things that the ancient Jewish people considered detestable. These people were like the embodiment of everything that the Jewish people had a problem with in terms of like pagan idolatry. They did everything that they weren't supposed to. In fact, in the ancient Jewish, like Old Testament law, the law that these people lived by, the Jewish people lived by, what they were doing like could have been considered worthy of death. You were not supposed to go near, touch, mess with any of that. And so they show up and they're like, oh, we're looking for this king of the Jews. And not only that, like not only were these magi like looking for a party that the ancient Jewish people feel like they were not even invited to, but their invitation came in a way that they would have seen as utterly detestable, like absurd, that they would even suggest that a star is what told them that their Messiah had been born. Like maybe if these magi were like, hey, we decided we were gonna have a Bible study. And at that Bible study, we saw like, oh, there's a Messiah coming. And based on all that, we came to the conclusion, maybe he's here. And so can you help us find? No, that's not what happened. They were like, we were doing the thing that we do, and we came to this conclusion. So where is he? Right? And it is so crazy. For Matthew to include this would have been ludicrous. Like the people that were reading this originally would have thought that it was vandalized, that somebody like broke into their library and just started making up crazy things. Because there's an implication here. The implication is that God spoke to these people through the star. Which for you and I is like, okay, whatever. We've got songs about it, right? Star of Wonder, Star of Night or Might. I don't know, but we made it into like part of to them, this was utterly detestable, and Matthew's implying that God used the star to show them that Jesus had arrived, that their Messiah had arrived. And so if last week like told us that God delivers in unexpected ways, not only is that like reinforced by this story, but God delivers to unexpected people in unexpected ways. Nobody would have expected Magi to be in this story because they got a message from God through the stars. So I was trying to think of like some kind of equivalent, right? And I don't really have a perfect illustration here, perfect equivalent, but think of things that like a lot of people in church do on a regular basis, like little religious gatherings that we have, things that are part of like regular church life. And then think of things that like maybe make church people a little uncomfortable, like maybe like a psychic or palm reading or witchcraft or sorcery or things where like, I don't know about that, right? Like I'm not supposed to go near, like imagine you're having a Bible study and all of a sudden someone shows up at your door and they're like, I was just like reading some palms and I was led here. Or I was doing my card thing, right? And decided to come here. Like the cards led me here. You'd be, hold on a second. I don't know about this. That would have made things really uncomfortable. And really, that's the point. Like, we have this box, right? And in the box is God and everything we're comfortable with God doing. And he can work in ways that we're cool with. And we'll say, like, okay, God's ways are not our ways because we read that in our Bible. And so, like, we say that, but really, there would have been and should be an extreme level of discomfort with reading something like this. Like sometimes God like looks at our boxes and he busts out like the Kool-Aid man busting through a wall, right? Like I am going to totally do something that is uncomfortable here. More than anything else, this story. Now, before like we jump to any crazy interpretations, right? Like before you think I'm saying you should go get your palms read or read cards or anything like that. That's not my point. What I can say with certainty here, though, from this story is that God has a relentless, controversial, even like uncomfortable desire to reveal himself to people who are searching for him. The Magi in this story represent like the human spirit's search, the human spirit's like longing for a connection with the divine. It's like we're one half, like all throughout human history. We operate as if we're one half, like searching for the other half, like searching for some kind of fulfillment, and we search for it everywhere in so many different places. One writer is named C.S. Lewis. I've quoted him before. He says like this is a quest. Really, it's a quest for joy, and we look for it everywhere. We look for it in the future. We also look for it in the past. Like nostalgia is part of this quest for joy. We look back on our lives and we're like, well, if only I could go back to the good old days. We talk about them as if they were better than they really were because that's where that fulfillment was, and I missed it. And if we could go back, we'd see it wasn't as great as we're making it out to be now. And we know that because when we were there, it really wasn't that great. Or we talk about what it was like what it will be like in the future. If only like once this happens, once I get over that hill, once I make it this far, once I make it this high, once I meet that person or get that position or that, like whatever it, like once I get there, well then I'll have like that fulfillment I was looking for. Zen Buddhists like call this it's like a burning hot coal that's stuck in your throat. It's too hot to swallow, but it sits there and it just burns. And so we look for like fulfillment, satisfaction, like everywhere. We look for that feeling to be quenched. And Jesus shows up and says like, look, I am the bread to that hunger. I am the water to that thirst. I am the rest to that form of fatigue. I am the light to that darkness. Whatever it is, like you want to call that burning hot coal, search for fulfillment, whatever. I'm what you're looking for. And maybe that's you, right? Like maybe you can connect a little bit with that feeling of like wanting something more. Maybe it is pointing to some kind of longing to connect with another half, like the missing piece, the burning hot coal that's stuck in your throat. Maybe there's something to what Jesus said. And if that's true, like for you, I believe that the good news about the Christmas story is that God has a relentless desire to reveal himself to people who are looking for him. A lot of people think like God is playing hide and seek, like you gotta try and figure out what he's doing, you know? But he wasn't. Like Jesus showed up and he was like, come and see. Not hide and seek, but like here I am. If you're looking for me, here I am. And then there's like other people that talk about God as if he's like up there like, well, you gotta get it all right. You gotta get your act together. Once you do it, maybe I'll like sprinkle some goodness, you know? And then then maybe you can be good enough for like my, but it is like the truth is the exact opposite. That like us, like at our worst, in fact, when we wanted him least, that's when Jesus came to express how much he loved people. Like while we were at our worst, that's when he demonstrated the extent of his love for us, to show us that even when we're not searching for him, he is still pursuing us. This is not the story of like three magi looking for God, though like it is kind of from one end. Really, if you step back and look at the big picture, this is like God going after these people that the religious community wants nothing to do with. That's the good news of the Christmas story, that God has a relentless, controversial, uncomfortable desire to reveal himself to people who are looking for him. God delivers to unexpected people. That's good news. There's also a warning here. There's also a warning here to people in the religious community. Like, did you realize these people, these magi, like they show up on the scene and they're like, hey, where's that guy that you've been waiting for hundreds of years? We think he's here and we want to go see him. Where is he supposed to be? And then the religious like experts, the people, they come out and they're like, well, we've got that verse memorized. He's in Bethlehem. And they're like, cool, see ya. And then they leave. Maybe, fine, maybe they're magi, maybe you're not used to that, maybe that's outside of your little box, maybe it's outside of the comfort zone, fine, but you think they'd be like, all right, let's go follow these people. Let's at least see what's going on here. Maybe there's something to this, but they don't. They don't care. And I think like while we can see that God has this desire to reveal himself to people who are looking for him, we also see from this story that religious people have a tendency to love what's comfortable, and that causes us to miss what God is doing around us. It causes us to miss when Jesus shows up and wants to show himself to us. And so what do we do with this, right? I've got like 2 application steps to 2 different types of people. Probably, if you're listening, it's probably you lean toward one side or the other, right? Maybe you're like, well, I'm not totally sure. I'm probably more like these magi who are like, you know, kind of searching, right? Or maybe you're more like the religious people who are like, all right, been going to church forever. Like I'm comfortable here. This is one of my things. Like I read the Bible. I do like probably you lean toward one side or the other. If you lean toward the side of the magi, My question for you, like tonight, today, this morning, whenever you're listening to this, is what is your star? What is the thing that maybe God is using to lead you to Jesus? Like maybe it's not like this, glowing thing in the sky, but maybe there's a broken relationship. And maybe God wants to show you something, like either through the reconciliation of that relationship or the recovery from that relationship. Maybe there is an intense amount of uncertainty right now, and maybe that's the star that God wants to, that maybe that's your star and God wants to show you that he can be trusted right now. Maybe you're dealing with stress and anxiety in a way you've never had to deal with before. And maybe God wants to show you something through that. Maybe things are like they've never been. Maybe there's a star. Maybe it's something totally unexpected and God is trying to show you something. The good news is that you don't have to get it all right. It's not like you need to get your act together. The good news is that if you're even open to looking for God, there is a God who's already looking for you, who's already going after you. That's the good news. Or maybe you're more like the religious people in the story. Maybe there's like certain things that you expect God to do and expect him not to do, and you're pretty comfortable with that, and you go to church, the Bible verse, and you know how to do the dance, right? My question for you is the same question I've been asking myself. If Jesus were here today, would I go out and see him? Or would my love for what's comfortable cause me to miss what's going on around me? Jesus told a story with a twist. I think it's one of the most interesting twists of all the stories that Jesus told, though he's also a man who loves twists in stories. From what we can tell. He presents this situation, right? And in this situation, it's in the distant future. There are two groups of people, and he looks at one of the groups, and he says, I was without clothes, and you gave me something to wear. I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you were the ones who gave me something to drink. And the people seem to be delightedly surprised. They're like, well, cool, but we don't remember seeing you. When was that, right? And he says, well, whatever you did for the least of these, you did for me. Like whatever you did for the people that nobody else thinks about. Well, anytime you did something for the people nobody else is doing things for, the people that don't seem to matter, like anytime you do something for someone who couldn't possibly give you something back, like that you did for me. And then he looks at the other group of people and he says, I was hungry and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, you gave me nothing to drink. I needed clothes, you looked the other way. I had needs and you weren't there. I showed up and you were nowhere to be found. And much like the other group, they look around like, what are you talking about? We don't remember seeing you. When were you out there? When did you need something from us? And he said, whenever one of these people needed something and you turned your back on them, one of the least of these, the people that can offer you nothing, the people that have needs that no one else is thinking about, every time you turned your back on them, you turned your back on me. I was there and you missed it. And I wonder, if he were to look at my life and all the different spheres in my life, if he were to have that conversation with me, what would he say? Right? Would he say, I was at the bus stop when you were dropping off your kids and I was dropping off my kids, and you could tell there was something wrong with me, and you didn't care and you just walked the other way. I was there at that restaurant a couple nights ago when I hadn't worked in nights because my manager kept telling me not to come in because no one's coming out to eat. And finally I got a night to work and I saw you at the table and you weren't wearing your mask, and I knew it was going to bother you, but I asked you anyway because I had to. And as soon as I asked you, you were upset, you were offended, you were mad. And I know you didn't tip me the way that you would have if I hadn't ticked you off. You did that to me. And I was there trying to teach your child, right? And I was trying to figure out, how do I teach kids on a laptop while also teaching kids in the room at the same time? And I was there and I was stressed, and I would go home every single day, spent, exhausted, feeling like I have nothing else to give. And then I'd get an email from you saying that I'm not good enough. And so we'll end right where we started. When I asked the question, if Jesus were to come here right now in 2020, would I be there? Would I go out to see him? He will. He will be here. He will be in your home. He will be at your workplace. He will be at your school. He'll be working alongside you. He'll be on the other side of the cash register. He'll be dropping food off at your door. He'll be driving next to you in traffic. He'll be on the other end of your emails, the other side of your phone calls and text messages. He will be there. Will you go out to see him, or will you turn your back on him? What if you and I made a little extra effort this Christmas season to see the people that nobody else is thinking about? Maybe one day Jesus will look at us and say, when you did that for them, you did that for me. You went out to see me when nobody else did. God delivers in unexpected ways and to unexpected people. Thanks for being with us this week. Hope to see you next week for part 3 of Unexpected Christmas.